Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Farmers Connection. I'm Christopher Holder. Farmers Connection is a presentation of the Ministry of Agriculture and seeks to keep you informed of the developmental projects across the agriculture sector here in Guyana. Of course, showing you the transformative type projects that will take Guyana's agriculture sector all the way in terms of realizing its fullest potential. On this week's presentation, we bring you highlights of a recent seminar hosted by the Guyana Livestock Development Authority, GLDA. This seminar focused on small ruminants, the small ruminant industry in Guyana. Participants for this seminar were drawn from across the small ruminant industry in Guyana, and featured not only farmers but also all stakeholders within the small ruminant industry in Guyana. What this seminar sought to do was to validate the systems and processes currently in place for the development of the small ruminant industry in Guyana. Of course, you know that the small ruminant industry, sheep and goat farming, is said to be on the up and up. It is an industry that is showing great potential, and with the opportunities available within the Caribbean and beyond, it is a government's plan to ensure that this particular industry is given all of the incentives for growth that is possible.
Householders, the fumigant aluminum phosphide, commonly known as carbon tablets, is a highly restricted use pesticide that should only be handled by trained professionals in the pest control business. This fumigant is among the deadliest in the world and should only be applied in sealed or enclosed places. It must never be used in the home, office, or where humans live, work, or play. It is not a rat bait and should never be used as such. A message from the Pesticides and Toxic Chemicals Control Board, Ministry of Agriculture.
On my lips, I feel it in my fingertips. It's pulling at my skin.
Rice farmers, do you know that the ideal time of sowing your cultivation is the May, June and the November, December periods? Sowing your paddy at these times of the year facilitates your crop being exposed to high light intensity due to maximum sunlight during the flowering and grain filling stages of the plant's life. This ensures a greater chance of higher grain yield and ultimately a bountiful harvest. Also important to a successful rice crop is the seed rate application. The correct rate is 80 to 110 pounds per acre.
The seed, me use 110 pound seed per acre. Clean seed, do you know?
Seed rate application are but two of a 6-step method of achieving a successful rice crop. A message from the extension arm of the Guyana Rice Development Board. On June 20, small ruminant farmers from all across Guyana, along with the principals of the Guyana Livestock Development Authority, GLDA, along with a wide cross-section of stakeholders in the small ruminant industry in Guyana, gathered at the Regency Suites in Georgetown for a sensitization and validation seminar on small ruminants. The purpose of the activity was for basic stock-taking on where we are as a country in the development of a potentially lucrative small ruminant industry, one that is dominated in the region by Jamaica, which produces some 1,500 tons of meat annually. Jamaica produces more than Guyana, St. Lucia, Antigua, St. Kitts and Nevis, Barbados, the Bahamas, and Grenada, St. Vincent, among others. The seminar provided the participants with the opportunity of being brought up to speed on the local, regional, and international production and trade in meat and breeding stock. The activity also allowed for group sessions to validate production practices, gaps in small ruminant production, and initiatives to build the capacity of youths and women in small ruminant production.
In Guyana, there are approximately 130,000 heads of sheep and 79,000 heads of goat. Guyana is one of the countries with the greatest number of sheep within the CARICOM region. However, it is perhaps the country with the lowest production parameter. The carcass dressing weight and other production parameters lag behind those of its Caribbean counterpart. The local sheep stock in Guyana is predominantly of Barbados blackbelly breed type, and the goats being Creole. There is an increased demand for breeding animals. Consequently, farmers have been importing other exotic breeds of sheep and goat. There is also several breeding programs run by GLDA to uplift the breeds of animals that we have within the region.
The senior extension officer also explained the role of the Agriculture Policy Program, or APP, which has as its ultimate goal the eradication of poverty in the region.
The ultimate aim of the APP is to ensure that small producers, entrepreneurs, including women and youth, are more effectively integrated into national, regional, and international markets. APP recognizes the need to 1. Strengthen the local institutions that support agriculture development, 2. Promote producers groups, and 3. Establish dialogue platform for stakeholders to engage each other. The APP is being implemented through a partnership with CARICOM, CARDI, and ECO. CARDI, in collaboration with Guyana Livestock Development Authority, is implementing some aspect of Component 2, where the primary focus is to improve the transfer and adoption of applied agricultural production and processing research results and technologies, and where appropriate, generate new technology for small ruminants. The project will run until December 2016.
In his remarks, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Agriculture George Jervis called on participants to adopt a more business-like approach to small ruminant farming. He said the practices of today must be done away with.
You can't continue to have the animals roaming as if they are strays, and then you harvest them when needed. You can't continue to have them walking as if they have polio, because all the hooves are affected by hoof rot. You can't expect, when you have, those of you who live on the coast, flood situations, that you've got to take them up into your house because their pens are flooded out. You've got to recognize that this is an industry that has great promise, and that with significantly less effort than many other industries, you can move to the point where it becomes financially lucrative. My point, therefore, eradication of poverty is a nice starting point, but I'd rather replace that by achieving wealth. Eradication of hunger, in my opinion, does not apply to Guyana. I think we have done that already. So what we're talking about here is to take this aspect of livestock production and put to it all the relevant science, business, and entrepreneurship that is available, to move it to that point where, like our other colleagues in other aspects of agriculture, it gives us the things we want out of the activity.
Speaking specifically to the goals of the APP, the PS pointed to Component 2 of the project. He said government is committed to lending its full support to all aspects of this project. Dr. Gavin Peters is head of the Animal Production Unit, GLDA. His presentation offered an overview of the small ruminant production systems in Guyana. According to Dr. Peters, small ruminant farmers must be aware of the relevance of several factors in the establishment of the farms. Among these was the proposed location of the farms, or topography, that is, hinterland or coastal zones. The advantages and disadvantages of rearing animals in these two areas. Another factor is the weather or meteorology, that is, rainfall levels, as it relates directly to diseases that affect the hoofs of small ruminants. Small ruminant value chain was another area of importance highlighted to participants during Dr. Peters' presentation.
And it encompasses all of the players in the small ruminant industry, starting from the policy makers and those who deal with policy at the level of the ministry, GLDA. We have the breeds, the multiplication and dissemination of those breeds, the responsibility of that aspect being some of the farmers or more progressive farmers who would have had these breeds and multiply them. GLDA is one of the players in that aspect, in that we have recently imported new breeds of small ruminants for dissemination and multiplication. You have the production systems that are being employed throughout the country at various levels. We have some subsistence farmers. We have farmers who are, like for example, Mr. Sankar that says he has 340 goats. So we have some large farmers, we have small farmers. Also, then we move on to the sale of live animals, which is the main format that is our small ruminants are being marketed. Most of you farmers would just sell the live animals to a middleman or a butcher who would come. But as PS spoke about, is that the best means of you maximizing your efforts to produce the animal? If you just sell it as a live animal to a butcher. Then there is the processing, where the butchers would buy your stock, then he goes and processes it, he slaughters it and then sells it. There are some farmers, a very few now, who are producing lambs to be sold in the supermarket. And then the transportation, the producers are responsible for that, marketing until it gets to the consumer. So that, in a nutshell, is what is the small ruminant value chain.
The small ruminant industry in Guyana is still a relatively small one. A look at the sheep and goat population in Guyana reveals that there are just approximately 100,000 sheep and about 75,000 goats. The system of production is mainly semi-intensive. Large farmers are those with 100 or more heads. There are 60 such farmers. Farmers with under 50 heads are considered small farmers, and they are in the majority in Guyana. Dr. Peters, in his presentation, said a national population census for sheep and goats in Guyana is urgently needed, so as to determine the exact figure as it relates to the population of sheep and goat in Guyana. This would remove the approximation that is currently done. He said not only is this needed for small ruminants, but for all of the livestock industry, as this would better enable and guide policymakers. There are a variety of breeds of sheep and goats exploited in Guyana. For sheep, there is the Barbados Blackbelly, Textile, Virgin Island White, Darper, and local crosses. For goats, there is the Boer, the Anglo-Nubian, Saanen, and local crosses.
We have this Textile, and in bracket we have the Texana. That's the sheep that was introduced through GLDA to cross with the Texel with the Barbados Blackbelly to get the Texana. Why the Texel? That's a sheep that increase in meat production, while the Barbados Blackbelly is being prolific. So when you cross it to, you get a sheep that an offspring that grows faster and produces a lot more land. The Virgin Island White, the Darper, and the local crosses that we have. Recently, GLDA imported some of these breeds, the Barbados Blackbelly, Texel, and the Virgin Island White. The goats, we have the Boer, Anglo-Nubian, Saanen, and the local crosses. All of these breeds, examples of which we recently imported in into the country. And those are some photographs of the breeds, the Barbados Blackbelly, the Boer, and the Virgin Island White. And Nubian, the goat and the milk.
The GLDA has 3 livestock development stations at which large-scale small ruminant farming is undertaken, utilizing cutting-edge technology and the incorporation of modern feeding practices for the animals. Through these projects, the GLDA is able to provide the breeding stock that are currently reared in Guyana. In reference to the opportunities available to small ruminant farmers, Dr. Peters outlined several key areas of opportunity.
In Guyana, we know we have land that can be utilized, so that is not a restriction. The genetic material is already available here in Guyana. Through GLDA, we have brought in some. It may not be enough, but at least we have started, and it's available. Just in a few weeks' time, we are going through the auspices of FAO. We are going to be doing a program for AI in goats. That is to teach us here through GLDA how we do AI in goats. That's using semen to inseminate your animals. The production systems are already developed. We have various levels, as I indicated before, and so farmers have the knowledge as to what to do. The PS gave an excellent example of farmers building or raising their pens. That's the kind of knowledge. Why did the farmer do that? So that's the kind of information we are looking for that you will share with us. And thus it's easier to organize and implement the strategies to increase production. Why we need to increase production? Because the markets are available. According to Lendell Mills Development Consultants under the 9th EDF project, the Caribbean region produced approximately 7.4 million kilograms of sheep and goat meat in 2008. But we imported 146.6 million kilograms of meat. That's in all categories. And sheep and goat meat was 9.4% of that, which is approximately 14 million kilograms of sheep and goat meat was imported into the Caribbean region. So you can see, if we are not producing anywhere near what we import, and so the markets are available locally and regionally for this industry to supply. Presently, most of the demand for small ruminant meat is met primarily by imports from as far as New Zealand, Australia, which accounts for approximately 80 to 90% of the meat that we import come from those regions. Through a project that is developed by the CARICOM Secretariat in conjunction with CARDI, the aim is to replace 10% of that import into the Caribbean with production locally. So that is an opportunity through CARICOM that we're trying so that our local producers would be able to supply. We're starting with a modest goal of just 10% to replace 10%. But to replace 10% of that importation is a lot. It's 14 million kilograms of meat. And this entails, for us, the target is for us to produce that added 10% to increase the breeding females by 35,000. So those are some of the opportunities that we would have to increase production and availability to all of us farmers who are involved in this industry.
But as can be expected, there are constraints to the growth of the local industry in Guyana. Given the high humidity on the coastal areas, foot problems plague the animals. Lameness and foot rot are among the more common problems. Other problems include parasitism, that must be monitored closely. There is a big problem of predial larceny or theft of animals. The need for more effective monitoring of breeding programs so as to increase the productivity of the animals were also highlighted. Another area of grave deficiency is slaughtering facilities.
There's no way, if we're going to get into the market to supply mutton and chevron to the iron market or for the tourist industry, that we do the slaughtering at our present facilities. This I'm talking about Guyana now. We all know in order for us to be able to export our meat, we will have to improve our slaughtering facilities and our methods of slaughtering these animals. Because you cannot be able to supply your meat to those industries, the tourist industries, the hotels, if they are not slaughtered and packaged and done according to the international standard.
But while there are constraints, there are great opportunities for the trade of goat and sheep meat intra-regionally.
Starting with a modest goal of just 10% to replace 10%. But to replace 10% of that importation is a lot. It's 14 million kilograms of meat. And this entails, for us, the target is for us to produce that added 10% to increase the breeding females by 35,000. So those are some of the opportunities that we would have to increase production and availability to all of us farmers who are involved in this industry. But what are some of our constraints? We mentioned this earlier, given the high humidity on the coastal areas, we are having problems with foot rot and internal parasitism. In small ruminants, we all know that those are two of the more common problems that we face. Parasites and lameness of the animals. We always got the thief among us. So predial larceny is another serious problem. And one that we at GLDA is cognizant about, and we actually had a symposium dealing specifically with predial larceny just a couple of months ago, because we recognize that this is a serious problem and it can affect or daunt the industry. Because if you're a farmer, you have, say, 30 sheep or goats, you let them out, and then when you go to collect your animals, you only find 10. It is not what people do. They get frustrated and they just say, I'm going to get out of this. My brother lives at Michael, just around on the public road. He let out his couple of sheep. These guys actually came in a car, drove the car slow, jump out, snatch the sheep, put it in the back of the car and drove off. That's the extent that people go to try to take your animals. The effective monitoring of the breeding programs so as to increase productivity of the animals. Because if we're going to be introducing the new breeds, it is important that we utilize them efficiently and effectively. And it's not just to take the animals and then you don't care for them the way you ought to. And deficient slaughtering facilities. There's no way, if we're going to get into the market to supply mutton and chevron to the iron market or for the tourist industry, that we do the slaughtering at our present facilities. This I'm talking about Guyana now. We all know in order for us to be able to export our meat, we will have to improve our slaughtering facilities and our methods of slaughtering these animals. Because you cannot be able to supply your meat to those industries, the tourist industries, the hotels, if they are not slaughtered and packaged and done according to the international standard. So those are some of the constraints that we face in the industry locally. But I don't see them as being insurmountable. As long as we together, and you can share some of your knowledge here, the traditional knowledge of how we can then overcome some of these constraints. Like, how do you deal with foot rot? How do you treat with your internal parasites? Is the veterinary services that you're getting adequate? You can share with us the traditional knowledge of how you deal with some of these constraints so that we can together move the industry
Participants were divided into 4 groups with the aim of discussing and exchanging information on various aspects of the industry. The parameters of the discussion included validation of the production process, use of small tools and equipment in small ruminants production, gaps in small ruminant production, initiatives to build capacity of youths and women in small ruminant production. Participants were allowed approximately 1 hour for this exercise, at the end of which there were presentations by the various group leaders. Each of the 4 groups were assigned a facilitator, 2 of whom were drawn from AICA. At the end of the validation exercise, participants shared their experiences.
Well, I've learned some valuable experiences from all, I've accepted them already as my colleagues about the remnants farming. And they've identified challenges, and we've exchanged information on some of the recommendations, how they can better increase their production and reduce those challenges. But what got to me is one of the initiatives for building capacity, a recommendation. We thought that farming in Guyana in some areas, or probably let me venture to say a wider spectrum, it's seen as not such a prestigious activity. We're taking into consideration what we're hoping to push for young women and children and youths. So what we came up with is that because youths, especially those who might not be exposed to their parents or relatives being a part of farming, they tend to not see farming as so important. And what we came up with is they should have some programs, whether in schools or on the media, to sensitize them the importance of farming and that how important it's becoming, because the world's population is going rapidly past 8 billion. And soon, Guyana will be one of those countries that will be supplying food to the world. So sensitizing them that farming is not a non-prestigious role or appointment. It's very, very important. And once we stimulate their minds with that, then that's the first step. We can have youths pouring in. And then secondly, of course, people don't want to talk about this one. Now there are some, after you've stimulated the youth, second stage, there might be people interested in it. I want to say myself. But elsewhere, you might need a way which you can get to start-up loans. So you've stimulated them. You're ready to become farmers. Which area? So there's need for funding. So we should think about that. So education, sensitize, get the funding, and then we mentioned pasture for especially the remnants that are that process ongoing.
What I would like to highlight about is that some of the constraints that we in Escrow is facing. Right? Every time we come to a program, you're always being told about how much money you could make and how much meat is being imported from New Zealand and Australia, and we could supply. But what I am saying is that the authority should put the mouth where the money is. Put the money where the mouth is. That provide the land for us, and we could show them what we could do.
My name is Ethan Gasco. I'm from Region 6, Works River. And one of the things that we're discussing is the point on the animals feeding during the rainy season and the dry season. which I think that each and every farmer do suffer from. In the rainy season, probably you may get a bad time because of the rock and stuff like that. In the dry season, you might get a better crop of animals and much better. And we also discussed about the feeding. Now, if, according to the gentleman over there, the government would assist us as farmers with some sort of finance to produce what they do not have to import, we could, as this good young man I should say that we could show them what we could do. We could do much, much more than going after importing animals. We have the animals, and we have farmers who are willing to put out everything to produce the kind of animals that we ought to have in our country for consuming purposes. Also, one of the another thing that we look into, this young lady says that veterinary support. Now, I want to thank the vets who has been so good at Region 6, which one of my vets is right next to me here. She's smiling very good and looking very good. For coming within our region and assisting us so much. And we're asking that the GLDA will look into by doing like small group training. That's one of what we touch on. And we hope that GLDA will look into it and that we could have a better country which do much larger farming. Thank you.
My name is Carol Benjamin. I'm from Region 2. I get good support from the vets in Region 2. I start out my venture with my two boys who love agriculture and they want sheep. So I start with 3 and it becomes their pet. And then I told them that we're vegetarian, we're not going to eat this. But they said, well, we're going to treat it right. So we decided to treat it like our babies. So we start observing and we start looking to see how we have to do. In the process, from 3, we have already sold 100 and something sheep, and now we are controlling 30 because our area is a residential area and my capacity is just small, so I don't want to overcrowd my area. And so we take care of it like it's a pet, but we still bring in money. It suffices my children with education. And our feeding area, as I was sharing, is that in the rainy season, we observe that our sheep don't feed well. They drop their weight. So what we do, our market is not too far from us. So we take the vegetables from the market. We have our brand, but we find at least 2 hours in that rainy season day to take them on a high spot that they can have that refuge of grass, because that is very nutritious for them. So that is how we educate ourselves with our animal, and we have beautiful animals. We have 3, and our animal only sold for development. We don't want our animal to slaughter, and we're still hoping not. So thank you.
Good afternoon, Desmond Thompson. I'm listening to Ms. Carol here talking about the rearing of the animal in the wet and the dry season and the utilizing of the greens from the market and those things. But what I'm thinking is, I've seen there is a supplementary feed that is being provided, molasses, urea, block, if you could say so. But what I'm thinking is, if the GLDA is thinking about assisting farmers in terms of formulating their own feed, utilizing whatever available materials is there for them in terms of utilizing these greens, if you must say so, corn, mixing it with the bran and all these other things. And not that only, but to let the farmers know what are the nutritional value of these materials, so that they could know in what ratio they could actually put these things together so as to feed the animals.
My name is Satnarayan Sahadev. I am a farmer from Vietnam. I rear sheep alone. I'm hoping to get into both. I just would like to make a quick comment. If we are serious about moving Small Ruminant Association in Guyana forward, if we are serious about having more sheep and goat, and we really want to look at meeting that 10% of our consumption in the Caribbean, we must get organized. We must get into a group. There must be a national association with regional branches. We must have more demonstration/breeding production facility so that farmers can have access to breeding stock. I was just thinking about the figures that was presented to us earlier, with roughly 100,000 population for sheep and 79,000 for goat. And then the presenter also said that there are roughly about 60 farmers. If we were to take 33% of those farmers to have about 300, 33% to have about 200, and 33% to have about 100, that will only account for about 12,000 animals. That still leaves roughly about 167,000 animals that are being reared under subsistence small scale farming. Those persons are generally not being represented anyway. Those persons are not being, the information is not being passed to them. And for example, just to buy a ram, for the part of the people that rear 167,000 of the animal, they cannot afford to buy a breeding ram at the general prices that are being sold outside. So if we don't have a national association with regional branches to coordinate and set up and really move this forward, I don't think it's going to move forward. So we should really work together, those of us who are here today, to get that going. And not only to get it going, but to keep it going later on.
Dr. Grantley Waldron is the DCO of the GLDA. He took the microphone at the end of the presentations by the representatives of the various groups. Dr. Waldron gave the participants an insight into the artificial insemination program that is about to be kicked into high gear, with goats being the first animals to be targeted.
GLDA together with FAO, there is a program that would be, I think it's scheduled to commence on the 1st of next month. We've already been in contact with some goat farmers, that is AI in goats. Later down in the year or next year, we'll be doing it in sheep. The thing is, we did it before when we had the Texel program, but now is what we're trying to do is to establish a unit, an AI unit in the country, so that in all the regions, we wouldn't be able in the initial stage to have a technician in all the regions, but we'll try to get at least 3 or 4, so that once we have the program established, which is going to be next month, you guys will be able to benefit from the genetic stock which we have. You, from Dr. Peter's presentation this morning, you heard about the different breeds that we have. For you to buy one of those, it's going to be real tough. We just heard it from your colleague. So one of the best and fastest way in disseminating genetic material is by artificial insemination. And that is what we'll be embarking on. As a result, it's not too late. Those farmers who wish to have their animals be a part of the program, as I said, we already have some farmers. You feel free to contact me after and we'll try to facilitate you. We'll be doing only 50 to 60 animals. So based on how many additional persons wish to have their animals be made available for the program, I'll see how we can try to assist you. Thank you.
Chairman of the day's proceedings, Mr. Anthony, told the participants of the steps underway for the establishment of a National Association of Sheep and Goat Farmers, a steering committee for which has already been set up.
The CEO just gave me the assurance that we will work along with that steering committee to look at all the ramifications, the policies, constitutions, etc. that is required to get you properly registered, etc. so that we can have this national association, then sub-regional association going. So today we wanted to nominate 5 persons who will be able to work on the steering committee. They may not be here. You know them well, you know they got animals, you know the interests that they have. Sad to say, we can only take 5 because we don't want a big committee to work with on the start, but when we get to the whole election, it's going to be huge. So, 3 males, 2 females. In that 5, we must have a youth as well.
Those 5 persons were identified and will go to work immediately on the steering committee. Rounding out the day's exercise was a presentation by the Chief Executive Officer of the GLDA, Dr. Dindyal Pamal.
What we can undertake to do is to work with you and to have further conversations as to how we can move this sector to another level, to a level where we not only want to see the industry just become sexy, but we want to see the industry become one that rolls in money into your pockets, to improve the quality of your life, so that you can buy the things which you want for yourself, your loved ones, your children, your grandchildren, and to promote an industry and to develop one which would allow you and your forebears to have a decent, high quality of life. We know that it is possible. Amongst you here, collectively, you own 3,614 sheep. We have just done the survey here with you. Just a small grouping here. You own in excess of 1,200 heads of goat. Some of you do the maths. Multiply that by the number of dollars for one animal. 20,000 for a goat or a sheep? Is that reasonable or is it too expensive? Too low. Let us say it's 20. Multiply it by the 3,000 heads, and what do you get? You get a figure that goes into the millions. And this is just a representative group of how many farmers have we got in the listing? 50? Colleen? The listing of farmers? 50 odd farmers. What we have started this morning, as I've said earlier, is a conversation. The conversation will identify some of the good practices that are present, some of the bad ones. We want to take measures to correct those bad practices. We want to be able to work with you. This organization exists for your benefit. This is a national organization. It's a state-sponsored organization. We receive subventions from taxpayers' money from the Treasury. And the sums of money are to be utilized for the benefit of the livestock farmers of this country. And you represent an important category of livestock farmers. And this beginning here today, we hope will grow and allow it to multiply into many, many small ruminants. We have a lot of initiatives. I don't want to take up too much of time for today's proceedings in these closing remarks, but I want to alert you that we've got a very significant number of programs earmarked for you, which are designed to put you on your feet, so to speak, over time, and the progress at the rate at which you are comfortable with, and to convert you not into subsistence farmers or pet farmers, but into commercial farmers, people who rear these animals for a living, people who rear these animals for the purposes of buying the things that they need. If you need feed for your animals, you need medicine for your animal, you need services to protect the life of your animal, you can buy those services with the income which you get from your animals. In other words, what we want to be able to do is to work with you and make you self-sufficient. So you do not have to ask anyone for any gifts, any freeness, so to speak. You elevate your level of farming to make it one which you can buy all the goods and services, just like other businesses do. And I would say that there are many of you in this room here today as we speak who are already able to do that. You are already able to do that, to buy the things that you need for your animals. And we want to encourage those who are not yet there to be able to work with you, to be able to earn a decent living. And there is very, very high value in food producers of the world. Those who produce food are always valued in their societies. In our case, this livestock sector industry in Guyana is worth just about $60 million US. We do not see it in any export numbers at this point in time. But what we can tell you for sure, that livestock or meat products, milk, eggs, are on the menu for the entire world. More and more people are consuming these products. Therefore, there's an opportunity for us to produce safe and wholesome food to supply this market, in the first instance, for our Guyanese here. And even here as we speak to, more and more Guyanese are consuming more and more of meat and meat products. And when you get old like me, you recognize I don't want to eat too much meat now, right? I begin to change. I want to eat vegetarian, right? But we need good, balanced diet. And sheep and goat farmers of this country represent an integral part of food security of this country. And I want to commend all of you this morning, this afternoon rather, in taking the effort to be here. And thank you very much for all the persons who have participated. A special word of thanks to those who have come from very, very distant locations, especially as far as the Veld, up the Berbice River. I've been there quite a few times, and I know what the current can be like. Some of our staff have been stranded there a couple of times, and you have provided very good hospitality for our staff. We've got boats that go up most of these rivers, so down the line we expect small ruminants from up rivers, all the rivers. We have boats that can go up all the rivers of this country, from the mighty Essequibo to the fast-flowing Currentine and the mighty Berbice as well. All of these rivers, we go up regularly with boat trips and service our farmers. We hope to be able to provide a better quality of service. I've heard some statements, some of the tables, indicating that our service can be better. We know we can be better. And we want to work with you to be able to be better. We want to be able to work with our staff to be better. We want to work with our international partners to be better as well. At this time, therefore, I wish to thank all the participants for this seminar, and I want to thank our international partners, particularly representatives from ICA, representatives from CARDI, representatives from FAO, representatives from the EU, and any of the others, all of the others that have participated here. Thank you very much.
Do you know that careless use or storage of common household pesticides can cause serious harm if you or members of your family experience sudden and unexplained rashes, headache, and aching joints? You may have been exposed to pesticide poisoning. Children are mostly at risk. Do not spray pesticides when the children are in the room. Wipe down surfaces where residue from pesticides may have settled. Keep all pesticides under lock and key. A message from the Pesticides and Toxic Chemicals Control Board. Rice farmers, Do you know that the ideal time of sowing your cultivation is the May, June and the November, December periods? Sowing your paddy at these times of the year facilitates your crop being exposed to high light intensity due to maximum sunlight during the flowering and grain filling stages of the plant's life. This ensures a greater chance of higher grain yield and ultimately a bountiful harvest. Also important to a successful rice crop is the seed rate application. The correct rate is 80 to 110 pounds per acre.
The seed, me use 110 pound seed per acre. Clean seed, do you know?
Seed rate application are but two of a 6-step method of achieving a successful rice crop. A message from the extension arm of the Guyana Rice Development Board. Farmers and householders, pesticides and other chemicals used on your farms, gardens and in your homes are dangerous and can result in death or serious injury if mishandled. It is important to ensure that all pesticides and toxic chemicals be secured in a locked cabinet away from children. Never store pesticides in the same space as food, animal feed or other supplies. A message from the Pesticides and Toxic Chemicals Control Board.
Well, that's all the time we have on this week's edition of Farmers Connection. I'm Christopher Holder. On this week's program, we focused on the small ruminant industry, and of course you learned all about what's being put in place to ensure that this industry is given the impetus for growth, as it were, with all the necessary inputs and facilitation that government can afford. Until next time then, I'm Christopher Holder. Remember, next Sunday we are going to be featuring the new Minister of Agriculture, Mr. Noel Holder, and we will be chatting with him about his background and about his impressions of the local agriculture sector and where he would like to see this important sector go in the next 5 years. Until next time then, I'm Christopher Holder saying so long.
Denko Masoka ni horonya ye